Okay, and we may come back and do some chords on this in a little bit, but that was like phase one of our little workshop. So we've got a few more handout sheets that we'll hand out here. And just we talked about hand position, and one of the things that's really important to play really well would be the scales, and you want to have a really good hand position when you play scales. If your scales don't sound like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, it's one of the big reasons could be hand position. So let's actually put some half steps in on our whiteboard here. We're going to go back to the whiteboard, and let's draw the D scale in underneath. You can leave the A scale up there.
Should I get rid of everything else?
Go ahead. Yeah, leave everything else. It's fine. Every scale we talked about has 8 notes, and I think I'm going to have Bethany number these. And what she's doing right now is she's writing in a D scale, because we're going to be playing in the key of D here. And you'll notice the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Between the 3rd and the 4th and the 7th, the 8th notes are what they call half steps. So she's going to put a little mark there to mark those. That means that your fingers are really close together. And then underneath that, why don't you draw the chromatic scale in with all the sharps. So she's going to start with A, and there are only a couple of notes that don't have a sharp in between them, and that would be B and C and E and F. And there's a couple of ways you can remember them. One of the funniest ways I remember is one time I remember I had a student that he was a biker, and he came in and he didn't know anything about theory, but he said, well, I don't know anything about theory except that B and E ain't sharp. And so I said, okay. It took me a second to get it, but like breaking and entering ain't cool. But B and E ain't sharp. So you'll notice there's no B sharp and there's no E sharp there. B and C are right together, and E and F are right together. So if Bethany was to write in all the notes, which she's not going to, but if she was going to, that fingerboard would be just full of notes. Every little slot would be taken, and so why don't you change a couple of those notes to make that a D scale? What she's going to do is she's going to take out the G sharp and replace it with just a G, and then it'll be a D scale. So we only have to change one note to go from the key of D to the key of A, or vice versa. And then the difference is you'll start on a D note instead of an A note when you're playing your scale. So I'll play the scale, and I'll have you point at the notes. And this is going to be the first scale you see on your page. So I'll play the D first. The E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And that's the and you can hear the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And notice she pointed at the little finger A, and that's the one I played. And even though when you first start you might not want to play that, that actually is a better sounding A than the open A, because you get a little richer sound on your bigger strings. So it's a good A to work on.
I play that A when I play the old rugged cross.
Sure.
I like the sound of it better than the open A.
Oh, absolutely, right. Yeah, I agree. I think all of your fretted notes generally sound better. Plus, if you want to get a little vibrato or whatever, you can get it where you can't
Not
get
at
it.
75.
Well, in the perfect world.
You don't have any idea how long it took me to play that note a day.
Oh, I know. It takes a lot of practice. So, so go ahead and point again, Bethany, at the D scale, and we'll talk about the the half steps. So D is open. There's a whole step to get to E. So there's that little space in between. Then you get to F sharp, whole step. But between F sharp and G, it's real close. Kind of sounds like Jaws. And then from
here's a bow you can use as a pointer.
Oh.
yeah.
Sorry, I will be in the way.
Yeah,
Where
and
is
then
the original
that's a
tune?
good idea. And then the A is another whole step. And then the B, you can see A to B is another whole step. B to C, another whole step. And then C sharp to D, half step. So on her chromatic scale at the bottom, and go ahead and use your volume, do the same thing. If she started with A, and we went a whole step, we'd skip the A sharp, go to B, go another whole step, we'd go to C sharp. That's 1, 2, 3. Now our fourth note of the scale has to be a half step, so C sharp to D. That's why we have C sharp and D. Now a whole step, E, whole step, that's why we have F sharp, whole step, that's why you have G sharp, half step, and F on A. And you can do that same little formula with any scale. That's what every single major scale known man will do. And you get it right off the chromatic scale. And what Bethany's doing now, she's writing in whole, whole, half. She's writing in the formula for a major scale. 2 whole steps, a half, 3 whole steps, a half. So you can follow that little pattern, start on any note, and you wind up with a major scale. So, okay. And then while you're right there, let's talk a little bit about the arpeggio, because we have that in our sheet, and we're going to be playing some of these. Arpeggio is just a fancy way to say we're going to play a chord. If we had guitars, we'd grab it and we'd strum a chord, but on violin we're not going to strum it, so we're going to play single notes. So we do the first, the third, and the fifth notes of our scale. So the first note is the D, the third note is the F sharp, the fifth note is the A. And if we look at our circle of thirds up above, that's exactly what we had before. You can see the D, F sharp, and A. And you can see where it says D equals D, F sharp, A. You'd be surprised how many songs that's the melody would be the arpeggio. That's how they get the melody. They just play the 1, 3, 5 in some form. So your D scale, the arpeggio. Kind of an easy way to remember the 1, 3, 5. If you think of either the old campfire song Kumbaya or Michael Roll the Boat Ashore, the first 3 notes are your arpeggio. You can hear that in that song. And so you can do that with any major scale, 1, 3, 5. So I think it's time to play a few of these. We'll get Bethany back, so it sounds great. And we'll all just try playing the D scale. So it's just what we have up on the board, or you can follow it on your sheet. So we'll start with D. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. D. F sharp. A. B. C sharp. D. Now we'll go back down. D. C sharp. D. F. G. F sharp. And then the arpeggio that we have here, we wrote it in the higher octave, but we could play it also in the lower octave. Why don't you go ahead and play it in the higher octave? But you know, play it.
You're playing the third line now, Randy?
Second line. We're just
Second
going to play second line, right?
Oh, that.
Just as it's written. In fact, Bethany and I are both going to play the second line. If you want to join in, you can. It's actually just the rest of the scale. That's not the arpeggio. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this is just kind of a tag on. We'll get our D note. Here's the note we're going to start on. Okay, here we go. So D. Half step. So that's the rest of the D scale in first position. So if otherwise we'd have to go up and get a B, C sharp, and D. so we won't worry about that yet.
That's Fiddle
but-
Workshop too?
What's that?
That's Fiddle
That's
Workshop too?
Workshop too, that's
Okay.
right. Although we will get up a little bit here in a few lines. Now where it says arpeggio, that's what we're going to play now, so the D, F sharp, and the A. So we'll play open D, F sharp, open A, D, then D again, open A. And sometimes when you're jamming with people, if they have the chords above and you don't want to play chords, you can just play arpeggios. Arpeggios sound fun. They just mix in with chords. Like a guitar player you'll see them finger picking a lot of times. They're just playing arpeggios, just for a fill-in. As long as you're playing the same arpeggio as they have the chord, it'll blend in just fine if you stay in time. The next thing we're going to talk about is harmony, and so we've done a little bit of harmony with Boil 'em Cabbage where we used our thirds, and we can do that with scales too. So what we have on the next two lines would be, it'll say D major scale, then it'll say harmony using thirds. So I'm going to have Bethany do the regular scale starting on D, and I'm going to start on the F sharp, and we'll show you what that sounds like. 1, 2, ready, go. Getting the table for the for the rhythm.
Yeah.
I think I'm in the over just a touch. Okay, so anyway, you can see that that's a nice way to get harmony. Is a lot of times you can just do thirds. We've got a song we're going to play for you in a little bit that'll show that. So I think what we'll do is just have everybody try that. You can either play the major scale or the harmony, and we'll all play it together. Just pick a line. Doesn't matter which one you pick. You can go ahead and play major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, okay. And then the A major scale, all we're doing is moving everything over a string. We're doing exactly the same fingering. It'll add the G sharp, as we talked about on the whiteboard a while back. So let's just play Bethany and I'll play the A scale for you once, so you can see the fingering is just going to go open first, second, and then your third finger is really close, and then open first, second, and your third finger is really close. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Same as we did for D, we're just moving over a string. 1, 2, ready, here we go. And then we'll play that with, Bethany will play that scale again, and I'll play the harmony. 1, 2, 3, 4.